welcome back to the Story Impact Author Interview Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Towles. The human voice is in itself a form of defiance, a desperate insistence on being heard and a refusal to be erased. Today, we're going to talk about how a poem and a 12-year-old boy can challenge power, mobilize resistance, and set forces in motion that no one can control. In the world's most dangerous corners, storytelling isn't safe, it's consequential. Sarah Lovett is a best-selling author of psychological thrillers with deep roots in criminal justice, a writer who has never flinched from the darkest corners of human behavior. Ron Schultz is a global changemaker whose work has taken him across some of the world's most contested landscapes where literature isn't a luxury, it's an act of resistance. Their new novel, Metal Viper, is an international thriller set against a landscape of vast beauty and alarming oppression. It's a story where a child's quiet voice and a father's poetry ignite a chain of events that expose the ultimate cost of truth when the stakes are life and death. In this book, beauty and brutality share the same border, and you'll find its characters are unforgettable. Sarah, Ron, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. That was lovely.
So I don't have author-specific questions. I'll just throw one out there and you guys can pick who answers it and we'll see where it takes us. I think Metal Viper has what publishers call legs. It has the ability to move and influence, and I think you did that by design. Tell me about the risks and rewards of launching a book like Metal Viper in the world, and in particular right now.
You know, it is interesting to try to ride the wave, the timely wave of what's going on. That was not the intent. Our intent was originally just to write about an organization, be inspired by an organization that is really doing great work in the world and how to get that story out. And doing that great work in some of the world's most dangerous places, as you said. So it was purely good fortune. I don't know that Myanmar hasn't gotten any better. We have been one of the things that both Sarah and I experienced was being kicked in the butt by some of our consultants who said, "You got to get this book done. It's important. The time is now."
Mm-hmm.
And they were also really, those same consultants were so helpful with research and, allowing us to move along in the book, right?
Why Myanmar? Why that particular connection, and what is your connection to that region and into what's happening there?
Well, I'll take this. The book is inspired by an organization called International Bridges to Justice. And it's led by a woman who is really quite extraordinary. I won't mention her name right now because we're still kind of concerned about IBJ getting too much, people knowing that we've written this book about them and particularly in their work in Myanmar, because Myanmar is so dangerous. We picked Myanmar because it was one of the places that IBJ worked in. And so that we had a base of understanding from a couple of our consultants, and it was it's pretty dangerous, and we thought would make a great place for a thriller.
Yeah, and also a story that needs to be told right now, right? I mean, I know this isn't technically like based on a true story, but it kind of sort of is in a way, right?
It's inspired by a true story of,
It's
the
inspired
baker
by, yeah.
and the
I had a
boy.
screenwriting partner who used to tell me, he says, "Ron, the truth is just a place to start." And so whether that's true or not, nonetheless, we were inspired by the work that's been going on here and around the world, and the really horrendous circumstances that are going on in Myanmar. And we had seen a newspaper clipping that documented the arrest of a poet baker, and
Mm,
that's all we needed. And
mm.
from there,
Right.
we devised the
That
rest of
was
it.
the catalyst. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Can one of you take us through kind of a very high level synopsis of just the overall shape of the story and what happens?
Sarah?
Synopses. Well, the baker and his son are arrested, and he's a poet baker, like our inspiration, posting and putting up poems in the baked items and to give away, and simple poems about freedom and beauty, and Vika works in the bakery, and there's a raid, and his both are taken away to insane prison, which is a notorious prison in Myanmar, and it's has that interesting alignment with the name insane, spelled differently, but it fits, right?
Mhm.
And so word gets back to Geneva, and where Kay and her team are centered, and that's Myanmar is one of their countries, and they have um, uh, people who work, justice makers who work within, and IBJ does have justice workers. They train them in these countries. So they have, in our fictional Article 5, they have people in Myanmar. So,
Yeah.
the urgent word goes out, and Kay's in action, the whole team is in action, how to get into Myanmar, how to get across that country that's so in turmoil, and rescue this boy. That's the basic nutshell of the
Okay.
setup.
And is Metal Viper a standalone thriller, or is this going to be the beginning of kind of a new series?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's book one of the Kei Zhang series.
Excellent.
And the second book is already underway uh, with the title Fire Leopard.
Oh, I
Yes.
love that. I just love that so much. I want to hear about kind of the mechanics of how the collaboration worked. You know, I've talked to a number of collaboration teams. Sometimes this person always writes chapters with this character, and it depends on the kind of the point of view of the book. But can you share anything about how this worked for you guys?
All right, first of all, a lot of laughter.
Say easily.
Fortunately.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Very informal, I'd say, and our very easygoing in our method. And I think Ron came to Santa Fe, where I am, so we could brainstorm
Mm-hmm,
when we were just sort of getting in the thick of it in the story.
mm-hmm,
And both of us have collaborated, so I think we're both used to that. And we're of a mindset. We're also longtime friends, so um, I didn't have to spend. I think neither of us spent thousands and thousands of dollars on collaboration contracts, which can happen.
mm-hmm,
And then we bounced, right, Lisa? We bounced the story, and we'd write. I think Ron started off. He often starts off with an opening scene, and then we just start going. And I think sometimes we each take a specific scene or a section, but we are not the thing where one of us writes about the darkest character and one writes about the humor, and one we just flow together, I think, well.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
it was really looking, uh, who stepped up. I'll write that. It was always that kind of a thing. Oh, I'll do that one.
Hmm.
I'll take that because we
Hmm.
would story conference. This is where we're going next. This is where the story we want the story to go, and
mm,
then
Right.
someone would raise their hand. There are only two of us, so one of us would raise our hands, and and the and then we go. And then when that person had written that scene, it was shared with the other person, and input was added, and back and forth. And before you know it, we had moved through this story, and I mean, Sarah is brilliant as a story, not only as a story analyst, but as a story, in terms of developing a story, in terms of knowing what pieces need to be there or what pieces are missing.
Hmm.
And it was a real joy to work with her. As she said, we've known each other for years, and this was one of those happenstance things where I went to her to say, "Hey, do you know somebody who wants to write this book about this?" And she says, "I do."
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
the timing was just right then. I love
yeah.
I love how it just kind of like flows, and it's not like specifically precisely orchestrated. And I've talked to collaborative partners that kind of in both ways, and I always love hearing
Hmm.
like what works. Sarah, you're also a coach. Can you talk about your coaching and
Sure.
how you work with writers, and maybe how you drew on that for this story?
Um, yeah, well, I've coached for a long time, consulted, editing, the whole gamut with fiction writers and memoirists, but primarily fiction. And I love that work. I have, a retired judge in Georgia, and I've worked with people in Southeast Asia, Zoom, hooray, and just the time zones. And I have a client in Britain. He pops into Portugal sometimes. So a lot of different types of stories. And I've found I can work briefly with someone, but often people come back. And so over the years, someone will just pop back in with a new book or an issue, or I want someone to go through this and give it an edit, or I'm stuck, that kind of thing. So,
Hmm.
and these are very personal relationships. So
Yes.
I figure, Lisa, that uh, I am not a professional who can give medical advice in any way, but a part of me wanted to be a psychologist and forensic psychology. I took a lot of courses,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's not to say my clients are cons or ex-cons, or they're just normal people. And but it is a way of intimately working with people, and I love that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah.
Ron, looking at your background, you have written a lot of nonfiction and fiction, I think, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get to the point where the idea of Vika and Kay, where you just kind of felt like this is the right time for this, based
Yeah.
on your long history?
Right. Well, I have an expression now, which is too old to wait. And this was a story that I couldn't wait on any longer. That we couldn't wait on any longer.
Yeah.
And the work that's being done in the world by social entrepreneurs and their ilk is really extraordinarily important. And because they're doing things with a mindset of how they can self-support what they're doing. And this is a story about an organization that is doing all it can to self-support itself and to help
Hmm.
people around the world. I mean, the organization itself has ended torture as an investigative tool in 12 countries.
Wow.
They have a technique for doing this that really works, and they're working in over 50 more, trying to get this installed in different places. And it's part of that is because of the woman who leads the organization is what my wife calls a warrior goddess. She's really quite extraordinary, and but it's what she's able. It's she combines that ability to get things done with an empathetic heart that just we tried to capture in the book, and I think to a certain degree we did. But it is very much about supporting this kind of work and getting the
Yeah.
word out. The fact that we've gotten the responses that we have for this book, which have been really quite wonderful to date from
Yeah.
people. Yeah, they really get it. They get what we're trying to do here, and
Mm-hmm.
they understand the urgency and the power and the pain that these folks are going through. And so
And
I am so pleased that we're able to put this out and hopefully put out two or three more of them at least as we move forward.
right. And the urgency is only the cry of the urgency is only louder, right? And I think more and more people around the world are facing authoritarian regimes and of one sort or another. And also, I would say that it is so wonderful. And Lisa, you write thrillers, I write thrillers, and it's so interesting to have a character and the group of characters in this book where Kay, our hero, is a warrior goddess. And she's very much advocate of no guns, nonviolence, and these are the real people. They're dogged. They have to go back to places after they sometimes, you know, their work is done and then it's not done because a new regime comes in or something happens, a setback. So really wonderful, eclectic team of on this in this book that
But how do
go work
we
with
as
Kay.
I'm sorry. How,
I'm
how,
done. Yeah.
how do we as writers take, do this kind of work of helping others, of looking uh in if our skills are writing, not going out and building organization, not going out and doing those kinds of things. And to me, it's gotten to a point of where taking a stand is incredibly important
Right.
and doing something. And so what Sarah and I did was we picked an organization that could benefit from this and fictionalized the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're trying to move that forward to deal with the notions. I mean, one of our heroes, Lisa, that we share is Elliot Pattison.
Oh, yes.
Mm,
And Elliot Pattison, each one of his Tibetan books
mm,
took another way that the Chinese had taken advantage and tried to destroy a cultural element of the Tibetan society. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what Tibet did about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the model for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's talk about craft a little bit. Let's take a step back. And this is something that happens for me. I'm sure it happens for you guys too. I'd like to hear about how, in the course of writing this book, the story surprised you. Like you wake up one morning and all of a sudden you get an idea that's not aligned with whatever outline you had thought of. And it's kind of like the characters are informing the story and they're saying, I have something to say about this, and we're going in this direction right now. And like, we're just the vessel. We don't have like the ability to push back. Did that happen? Did Kay or Vika talk to you in that way as you were writing this?
Sarah, do you want to
yes.
start with it?
Yes. Yeah. I think for both of us. And then it was a combo at first, kind of, it's funny. I mean, you start initially with ideas, right? And I have a mentor Al Watt, who runs the 90-day novel. And he always says, your idea of the story is not wrong. It's just not the whole story, right? So in the process of beginning and writing our stories and working, letting them talk to us and boss us around sometimes or trying to figure out more things, then the preconceptions move away, and that is surprise, right?
Hmm.
So I think at first we were working, Ron and I, doing our dance of kind of writing about characters back and forth. A little, you do a little, I do a little,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think they took off, and there are scenes. there's jungle scenes, and there was scenes when Kay was training with meditation,
Mm.
um, and Richard was a Richard, the Reinhardt
Reinhardt.
is a character that surprised me often.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that happened, and it's
Yeah.
still happening. You know how
Right.
when you're continuing a series, then they talk to you and you dream about them, and at times and in different places. And
Mm.
I'll think, oh yeah, that's a great Kay. She would do that. So
Mm. Mm.
We
yeah.
had we had an interesting we introduced at one point very early in the book, we introduced elephants who were part of the story, who were helping clear a road and doing what
Spoiler
they use
alert.
elephants
Yeah.
for.
Mhm.
And we had no idea. We had to really go back to the old dictum. If you show an elephant, you better use it. And so
In Act
we
3. Well, and
we
I did look up some things, facts about elephants, but
yes,
let's not give it away.
we won't give away
They
how
factor
important they were.
importantly.
Yeah, but
Very.
that was a complete surprise that they would
Well,
reemerge in the way they reemerged.
Well,
So yes, the answer to that is yes.
it just speaks to how different that region is. I mean, like, look at the job of fiction. I mean, like, I want fiction to be transportation, to pull me out of the
yeah,
business world, of writing and publishing and creating, and just take me somewhere else. I want the armchair travel aspect of it
yeah,
because I love that. And that's what makes me excited. I mean, like if I only have 15 minutes to read a day, that's what I want from that book, and that kind of sets
right.
me right again. So uh,
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some more about Kay. I mean, where she came from, what she cares about most, what's holding her back, and maybe where you're planning to take her in this series, if you can do that without any spoiler.
Yeah, I'll do what we can. The woman who inspired this, I've known for 15 years, um, and have always wanted to do. I've done a lot of stuff with her and for her. And in fact, my wife and I went and spent a month with them in Geneva, working with their organization around business processes and
Mhm.
around writing things and getting things done and helping her out with and uh, she has a small staff of about 10 people, and then she had about 20 interns working for her at the time.
Mm.
And so we were working with all these folks, and there's there's a quality that she carries of her empathy and her caring about the world and her sense of something that has driven her, which was, if not me, who?
Mm, mm,
And she has lived that. She
mm,
has lived that to her, and so we've tried to embody that kind of spirit
Mm.
in this character of Kay. And so she's there with lots of love. She's there with lots of heart. She's there with lots of empathy
And
and
she also
ability.
has her doubts and her flaws and her human, very human side.
mhm,
She's very dimensional.
mm,
And I'd say that from using a writer's term, but it's true as Ron introduced me more and more um, to who she is, um, and who she became in fiction. Then, yeah, very much including quirks and those things that are so fascinating in
mhm.
in life with people, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
It makes them memorable.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
I
human.
I'm curious, since you both have long successful writing careers, writing different things, what you know now that you wish you knew in the beginning or earlier in your writing journey. about writing, about publishing, about the craft, about kind of everything that we have to mobilize as authors to produce
Mm-hmm.
works into the
Mm-hmm.
world.
You
Mm-hmm.
go first, Sarah.
Well, my career, spans back, we barely, I mean, the internet was a word, and I remember, and then email, I remember sending to my poor editor some limericks that were very funny because I thought they were very funny. How many limericks do you want to get in your email when you're a high-powered CEO at Random House? But it was so new, right? And one thing, Sisters in Crime was important, but I realized when I sold my books, I was shocked, my first book deal, and I was not prepared. And I was not prepared to be the one who was the star at conventions and things, right? I was prepared to be part of Sisters in Crime and, one of the authors there, part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and when I got to some conferences, I'd heard from other people that I'd been touted as the big star, but you're nice and you're Sisters in Crime and you're a normal person. So I think one of the things that was hard for me was I'm introverted, and I've learned to be much less so, but that's part of my writer person, right? I disappear inside for times. And that was hard for me to know I needed to sort of activate an out in the world ego. I guess I'll say
Mm-hmm.
that. And I just mean a healthy ego, right? Not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
look at me pounding my chest. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that was hard. It shocked me. And then I am so glad I'm here in a time when, indies and, all these groups of writers support each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we have many options. And that's what I tell my clients too. You think about where you want to be if we're going after agents and the big five, the big houses, or do you want something regional, or do you want something where you really have autonomy? And so I guess I would tell my young self that sometimes what you wish for is difficult to deal with, and hang in there,
Yeah.
and things change, and don't lose your joy, right?
Yeah.
Lisa, you wrote something about joy and hardship in your newsletter, and I was thinking, I lost my joy sometimes, and one thing about Ron is, boy, it's joyful, and I love that because it's not always easy to be an author, right? To be a writer,
Right.
selling your work and having critique. And
Yeah.
so it's very joyful for me again, but there were times it was tough.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we have a real mutual admiration society, as you can tell. For me, learning, I learned so much from Sarah in terms of construction of a thriller. But what was also important, and which has been developing over time, I was thinking more and more about this, was how important finding my voice was. And when I found
Mhm.
my voice as an author, it started opening up areas for me that I had not imagined because I felt much more comfortable in story, and I felt much more comfortable telling a story that was being personal and coming from that place of pain, of my own sadness, of my own. One of my favorite things is writing, and this is how I know a scene is, or at least I know I can feel that the scene is authentic is when I'm writing and I start to cry.
Mm.
And when the scene moves me that
Mm.
I've just written,
Mm.
and it's because I know that I've been honest with it, and
Mm.
I know I've listened to my voice that wants to tell that story, and I know it's been told well. So it's
I
I've
will,
really
I will
learned to
tell
trust
you,
that.
Ron's a crier.
I'm a crier. It's true. That would be me.
I'm
Sometimes
teasing.
sometimes I've cried at the end of a novel.
Yeah,
My book Terror Bay was a terribly emotional. I mean, all
yeah.
psychological thrillers are, but yeah, I've cried sometimes at the end of a book. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what I'm writing scares me. And Sarah, one of my early
Mm-hmm.
writing teachers, as I call her, Natalie Goldberg
Yeah.
from Taos, she said,
Yes.
"Write what scares you," and because
Yes, she
there's
did.
energy in that, and that always stayed with me. Ron, I want to
Yeah.
to one thing you said about voice. I think that's fascinating. And debut or early stage authors are always told to find their voice as a way of differentiating themselves among like a sea of writers. How did you know you'd found it when you found it? Like, how did you know? Did you just feel it, or I know it's kind of a an abstract question, but I'm
Yeah,
curious.
it is, but it is a listening process. I mean, writing is about listening for me, listening to my own what's coming out of inside of me when I'm writing. And I knew I'd found my voice when I was able to incorporate humor, incorporate the various things that are important to me in the piece, and not hold back, and not think, oh well, that's not going to be funny, or that's not going to work. Just to allow that to work. And it also had to do, of course, with learning to open my heart.
Mm,
You
Open your
when
heart. I'd say open heart is
yeah,
big.
when you can open your heart and do so without fear, you it's amazing what comes out and what you hear. And that's what the main thing is that I knew that when I can feel my heart open, when I can feel myself letting go to that, not trying to control it, not trying, just being that with that. And if something is funny, going with it. And funny is hard. I mean, writing funny is really hard, as you may know. There is an old adage, about dying is easy, comedy is hard.
mm,
But the in but it's also about. I taught my daughter very early on, my younger daughter, very early on, the secret of comedy. There was always an old joke, what's the secret of comic timing? Timing really isn't the secret. What the secret is commitment.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you are committed to a joke, you may make somebody crazy with that commitment, but they will eventually laugh.
mm.
And so that was really a part of that, finding that voice, is that how committed am I to telling that story, and
Well,
whether it's funny or not.
and allowing it to come up. I mean,
I
permission.
think that's,
But
yeah,
I mean,
letting.
I think what you guys have done and what you're doing with Metal Viper, it takes so much courage. It takes courage to take something that lives in here and to bring it out into the world where it can be seen and judged and analyzed. And it takes courage.
Right,
And we do it because
right,
we can't help ourselves from doing
right.
it, right? Yeah. And your readers will find that with this story and with these memorable characters. And I'm not finished with Metal Viper, but I can't wait to get back to it. I'm gonna have 30 minutes to read this afternoon in between projects, and that's what I'm going for, and I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Well,
Oh,
Where can
good.
people find your book?
Well, the book is available wherever fine books are sold, and and probably where even some not so fine books are sold. It is available through all the different systems, through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through Amazon. Go to your independent local bookstore and
Bookstore
you
and
can order it
ask.
through them. I would
Yeah, they
prefer
can
that.
get it.
Yeah, you can get it everywhere.
And metalviper.com is its own website, right?
Yes.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool.
Yeah,
That's where, I mean, so you can go to sarahlovett.com, you can go to Ron, your
right,
website, and
Ron Schultz author.com.
I'll put those in the notes so that people
and
great.
will get
and
them. But also
Thank you.
metalviper.com, just to kind of zone in
Right.
on this particular book. Well, I think the book is already unforgettable. The characters are really staying with me, and I'm so excited that there are going to be more of them, more of Kay.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
We're working on number
Wonderful.
2.
All right,
Yes.
good. All right, well, once number 2 is done, I'll have you back here and we can talk all about that. And thank you so much for joining me today, and
Mm.
listeners for joining Story Impact again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.